Hello guys, welcome back, and today we're going to be talking about my overview of the 2019 NHL standings predictions. Now, I already finished the 4-part series in which I looked at every single division and predicted where the teams would finish by the end of the season. That series is complete, but in this video I'll be looking through every single team and answering where they'll finish. 31 teams to 1. So yes, if you haven't noticed already, this video will likely be pretty long, so brace yourselves and maybe get some popcorn. The team that I predict to finish last in the entire NHL is the Detroit Red Wings at number 31 on the season. I just don't see a lot of things going right for Detroit. I see the goaltending not really working out, the defense being old as stiff as ever, and offense, Philip Zadina was just sent down to the AHL, which will mean they'll have less talent on the roster, less skill, and all in all, losing Zadina will be a huge blow to that offense. The team that I predict to finish 30th in the entire NHL is the Vancouver Canucks. To me, I just don't see a lot of things going right for them. They lost to the Sedins, of course, they lost Thomas Vanek at the trade deadline. While they do add Elias Pettersson, it is a almost exact same team as it was last season. So I do think things will get a little bit worse on the offensive side. They will lose some firepower there, which ultimately really makes a bad team already worse, which doesn't do them too many favors. At number 29, I have the New York Islanders, and to me, I see some things going right in New York, but just losing John Tavares, I think will be a big blow to them all in all. I'm going to get last in the Metro Division. I just don't really see a lot of good things happening in New York. I don't really like that defense too much. The offense is pretty solid, but that goaltending still has massive holes, and all in all, the team, I think, could have a good future with some of the prospects that they built up, but I don't think it's quite there yet, especially with John Tavares leaving. Ranked number 28 in the NHL, I predict the Anaheim Ducks to finish in this spot. Still one of the worst teams in the NHL at number 4. I just don't really see a lot of good things happening for Anaheim. Of course, Corey Perry was out, but honestly, I don't really see too many great things happening. I mean, I like that defense, I like some of that forward core, but I think it just has too many holes on that offense, and I don't feel like Ryan Miller is going to be good enough as a backup as is. Honestly, while I am taking a big risk and putting Anaheim this low, I do think some things will ultimately happen to where they are that low. Ranked number 27 in the NHL, I have the Ottawa Senators, them just barely being bottom 5 in the NHL. I see Ottawa being a bad team, but I don't see them being as bad as people do expect them to be. While a lot of people are putting them as last in the league, and I do get that, I just don't see how that can happen. The NHL is just such a wacky league that it just can't happen. The NHL is too wacky, it's too weird, and too many crazy stuff happens in the NHL for the Ottawa Senators to be last. I do expect them to be bad, but not quite last place. At number 26 in the league, I predict the New York Rangers to finish in that spot. To me, the New York Rangers are in a weird phase right now. They didn't really make too many changes last season or in this offseason to really warrant them being too much better. I do see them being around the same team. I do see some guys possibly playing very well, like Chichil, maybe even Elias Anderson if he gets called up. There are some interesting factors with New York, and of course they got a great future right now. I just don't see them really improving this year, but possibly the next. At number 25, I have the Montreal Canadiens. Now, I do see them taking steps this next season. I do see them being an okay team, but to me, it does rely on Carey Price. How good he will do will determine their season for sure. The Canadiens at 25, they're not really a great team. I don't see them really being near the playoffs. I could see them being competitive, but they're just not quite there yet. At number 24, I have the Chicago Blackhawks. Now, of course, they missed the playoffs that last season, but the year before that, they won a division. To me, Chicago is a really interesting team. If Corey Crawford is healthy, they could be they could be a solid team even. But to me, I feel like that health of Corey Crawford is in jeopardy. There really is no real answers right now. And for right now, it doesn't seem like Corey Crawford will be able to start the season, and for me, that's a huge blow to me. So I do see them finishing pretty low, and it's mostly because of the health of the team in general, namely Corey Crawford. At number 23, I have the Minnesota Wild. Now, of course, made the playoffs last season. I think they had 100 points. They looked pretty lackluster in the playoffs. And I mean, I just don't really see things going Minnesota's way, of course. With Eric Stahl, I don't think he's scoring 40 goals again. Let's be honest here. He was likely an MVP candidate last season. I don't see him being that good again. To me, Devin Dubnyk is inconsistent. I don't really like him as a reliable starter anymore. And that offense worries me. Some of the defense is fantastic. fantastic, I'm going to be honest here. But overall, I think the team will maybe have some injuries, but I think overall the team will be on a downward slope as we see those contracts in Suter and Parise really start to hurt them. At number 22, I have the New Jersey Devils. Now, of course, they made the playoffs last season. They were a very solid team. They looked pretty good. But this next season, I just don't really see it working out for them again. Taylor Hall, of course, had an MVP season. Will he have that again? We're not quite sure about that. The goaltending could be sorted out, but again, Corey Schneider, age 32, is kind of up there in the question marks. The defense is okay, I guess, but really there are question marks on that team as well. And with the offense, there are some good players in that team for sure. There are some returning players from injuries, but I just do not see it really working out for them. While I think they had a very good season last season, I feel like it'll come back down a little bit to earth again this next NHL season. For the 21st team in the NHL, I have the Los Angeles Kings. Again, as I said in the Pacific Division predictions video, I see them missing the playoffs. I still see them being an okay team, but just not playoff worthy. I don't know if the Kovalchuk acquisition will be very, very good for them. I don't know how it'll really boost their team, especially with him at age 35. I have some concerns about them. I don't think Kopitar will be able to live up to as many points as he got last season. I like that defense. I like Quick as well, but I just feel like some of the trades that they made won't really help them too much in the long run, and all in all, they're still an old, slow team, and for that, I don't think they can really compete in today's NHL. At number 20, I have the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, of course, they've been an interesting team for like the last couple of years. I predicted them to make the playoffs last season, the year before this one. They didn't do that. They were disappointing. This next NHL season, I see them improving. I see them having potential, but not quite getting into the playoffs. I see them being a decent team. I see the goaltending improving, but again, just not quite getting there. I think they will be a good team in a few years, but they're not quite there yet. At number 19, I have the Colorado Avalanche, and of course, they're kind of in the same situation as the New Jersey Devils. They made the playoffs last season. They just barely made it in. But to me, I just don't see it quite connecting again this next NHL season. Again, 19th overall ain't bad, but I just don't see them really converting. I don't know if that goaltending will really work out for them. I have some questions about that defense, and I have some questions about that forward group. And ultimately, while I do still think they'll be a decent team, they'll be in the race, just not quite able to make the playoffs. I think that'll slip in the last week of the season. Now, the next two teams are teams that just barely missed the playoffs, and at number 18, I have the Buffalo Sabres. Now, if you watch my Atlantic Division predictions, you know that I had the Buffalo Sabres 1 point out of the playoffs, right behind the Boston Bruins with 93 points. And to me, I see Buffalo making great strides in improvement. Rasmus Dahlin will be amazing for them. I feel like Carter Hunt in that goaltending position will sort of few things out for them. I don't know if he'll be great, but I think he'll be decent. Jeff Skinner is a huge job for them to score goals, and hopefully having a healthy Jack Eichel will do wonders for them. And of course, Casey Milstat is my Calder favorite right now. So I have a lot of optimism for Buffalo for their future. Right now, I do see them making big improvements, but not quite enough to make the playoffs, especially in that crazy Atlantic Division, which might get very, very good next season. And for the best team, in my opinion, to miss the playoffs, I have the Edmonton Oilers. If you saw my Pacific Division predictions video, you know that I predicted Edmonton to be the best team to miss the playoffs. And at number 17, I predicted them to just miss the playoffs by a few points there. I feel like they'll be very, very decent. And to me, I see a little bit of a resurgence in guys like Cam Talbot. I see the team overall being very, very solid. But again, they have a decent future, I still think. And with some of those prospects coming up, I feel like they'll have a lot more youth than they ever had before. Now, from this point onward, we're going to be talking about playoff teams only. So prepare yourself for the good teams here, the teams that will only make the playoffs. At number 16, I have the Boston Bruins. The Boston Bruins will be the worst team to make the playoffs, again, being 1 point out from being eliminated from it. So to me, I feel Boston will be decent again this next NHL season. Again, making the playoffs ain't bad. I just feel some things will be a little bit lesser so than they were last season. I don't see really a lot of those older guys performing as well as they did. I don't know if Brad Marchand will be as good as he was in those games. I don't know if they have the depth that they did last season, which I think will hamper them a little bit. Of course, Daniel Char getting a year older. Some of those older guys getting a year older won't really help them too much in the long run. At number 15, I have the Arizona Coyotes. If you watched my Pacific Division predictions video, you know that I predicted Arizona to make the playoffs, and I know I'm a little bit crazy on this, but I do predict Arizona to make the playoffs, and I do think that they have a decent team on their hands. The defense is solid. I think Antti Ranta is a very, very solid goaltender and could be a Vezina candidate next season. I feel like the forward group is better than they've ever had, and some of the youth that they have coming up, I think will really help them throughout the season, which will propel them to a playoff spot. At number 14, I have the Philadelphia Flyers. I predict them to get 4th in the Metro Division. I still see them being a decent team. Again, I feel like the goaltending will kind of hold them back a little bit to get the points that I think they can get. If Carter Hart can come in and play well in a couple of years, I think this team will start to really take off and start to finally win some Metro Division championships. I feel like this team is really a goaltender away from winning a division, but I feel like that goaltending will hold them back as long as Carter Hart is still in the WHL or wherever he plays. At number 13, I have the Columbus Blue Jackets. I see them being a very solid team for the regular season, but also making a push in the playoffs. That'll be a little bit of a spoiler for the playoff predictions video, but for the Columbus Blue Jackets, I do expect them to be a very solid team. With the offense, I expect a lot of guys to break out, so a lot of guys to bounce back. On the defense, they got Seth Jones and Werenski, who you guys know is one of my favorite pairings in the league right now, and you got Sergei Bobrovsky, who is the best goaltender in the world right now, and Korpisalo, who I think can become one of the best starters in the league if he gets trained enough and if he's allowed the starter job there. So Columbus has potential to my eyes, and I feel like they'll be a very solid team to boot. At number 12, I have the Vegas Golden Knights. Now, I expect them to be a playoff team. I expect them to be a solid playoff team. Just not, again, winning the Pacific Division, Western Conference Championships. I just don't see that really happening from Vegas this season. I expect a little bit of a step back while they'll still be a solid team. I do expect some of their players to regress a little bit. And all in all, I still see it being a very solid year for Vegas, just not quite what it was in year one. At number 11, I have the Dallas Stars. I expect them to be the best wildcard team in the league in that Central Division. It's a pretty good division, so I do expect them to be held back a little bit. But the Dallas Stars, I feel like we're supposed to be a playoff team last season. The last month of the season, they kind of choked it away. It was just kind of a weird anomaly season from them. I do expect them to be a playoff team. I think they are a playoff team on paper, and I feel like this team can make a run for it. Now, they're not a Stanley Cup team. I don't think they're a third-round team, but I wouldn't be surprised if they made the second round if they got upset a couple of teams. I think this team has potential. I think the Dallas Stars can show that throughout the regular season to become a very solid wildcard team. At number 10, I have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Now, I do expect them to be a very solid regular season team. I do expect them to just get over 100 points with 101. I expect Pittsburgh to be very solid throughout the season. I expect Matt Murray to have a bounce-back season to be very, very solid once again. I see that defense being okay, better than it was last season, but still not the greatest. And on offense, I think is going to be one of the best in the league still. Of course, you got Malkin, you got Kessel, you got Crosby, you got all those guys. I think they'll continue to roll out, they'll continue to play. I don't think the age will catch up to them yet. I think they're still pretty much in their prime. You're going to start exiting out of that, but I feel like they're still going to put up a ton of points throughout the season. At number 9, I have the Calgary Flames. I expect them to be a very solid team throughout the whole season. You know, there are some concerns about Calgary, maybe about their depth, maybe about their defensive woes a little bit, and I think the biggest kind of downside they have is their goaltending. I don't know if Mike Smith can really be that elite guy that I think the Calgary wants him to be. I don't know if John Gillies can really be that solid backup that Calgary needs him to be. I have some concerns with Calgary, but I do think it will work out, especially on that offense. I think James Neal will be a big boost to their team for the now. I feel like he's a good fit, and all in all, I feel like this team will score a lot of goals, and that defense, I think, is good enough to stop a puck a little bit. I think they'll be a very solid team, and through the playoffs, they could have a good seed. At number 8, I have the St. Louis Blues. I expect them to be one of the best third-ranked teams in the division in the league. I expect St. Louis to do very, very well. I like their offseason moves, of course, with Ryan O'Reilly. That's a big trade for them. They got some other guys. They got Patrick Maroon. They got David Perron. I like the acquisitions that they got in the offseason. Tyler Bozak is iffy for me, but I think this team is a very, very solid team. I think they were kind of just having an anomaly season last season. A lot of guys were underperforming, and I do expect some guys to bounce back, namely Vladimir Tarasenko. So I think they will be a very, very solid team, a very deadly team on the power play and on the point. So I do expect it to be a very solid team from them and to be likely one of the best teams in the NHL. At number 7, I have the Florida Panthers. I expect them to be very, very solid and to make great strides throughout the season. Last season, they just barely missed the playoffs, but I liked what I see from them. I liked their moves. Of course, Mike Hoffman is a huge out of that top 6. It's absolutely deadly. One of the best in the NHL. That defense is more offensive-minded, so we'll give them a bit of a break. Of course, you've got a bit of a problem with the goaltending. I think Roberto Luongo will still be solid, but there is a question about James Reimer's kind of ceiling. I do expect Florida to be very good, and that offense to carry them is going to be absolutely lethal throughout the whole year. That top 6 is one of the best in the NHL, and especially adding Mike Hoffman, it's going to get even better. At number 6, I have the reigning 2018 Stanley Cup champions, the Washington Capitals. I see them being a very solid team once again, winning their division in the Metropolitan Division. I see them being very solid. I see them being very, very good again. Their team didn't really change too much throughout the offseason, so it's pretty much the same team there. I don't think they're going to have a Stanley Cup hangover. I think they're going to be quite fine on that department. I think it's all just putting it back together again, and I think they'll be able to do that throughout the regular season. Now we're getting into the top 5, and at number 5, I have the Nashville Predators. I still expect to be a very solid team throughout the season. I suck that. Really, that offense is fantastic. That defense can be fantastic once again. The only thing that might hold them back for the President's Trophy, I think, is that goaltending situation. I think Pekka Rinne won the Vezina Trophy. He's a fantastic goaltender, but at age 35, I have some questions about his health, about his overall ability going into next season. I think UC Stars will have a fantastic season. Will almost kind of be in that starter job for a few games there. I think you will start to steal it towards the end of the season, and we could see a little bit of a debacle in the playoffs, which I think will lose them a few games in the regular season, which will lower them a little bit in the standings, but again, number 5 is still a fantastic team. At number 4, I have the Tampa Bay Lightning. I still expect them to be a fantastic team. Again, their team didn't really change too much throughout this offseason, throughout last season. It's pretty much the same team that we're having here. So I think Tampa Bay is going to have still an electric season. I think Vasilevsky can be even better than he was last season. Again, he kind of tailed off towards that second half. The defense is fantastic. I love it. One of the best in the NHL. The offense is explosive, and we could see it possibly get even better next season. I really like what Tampa has assembled here, and of course, with Steve Yzerman has left here. And so he's done a great job, and this team is really prime and ready for another run, which will hopefully they'll finally get done and win the Stanley Cup. Of course, the Tampa Bay Lightning are my second favorite team, so I'd like to see that happen. At number 3, I have the Winnipeg Jets. Now, I expect them to be a very, very good team, but I don't see them really being a very, very good team like they were last season. I see some things changing here. Now, the main thing is Connor Hellebuck. I don't see him being as good as he was last season. I see a little bit of regression from him. Not completely, because I do still see the Jets as a good team. I still see him being a starter-type guy, but not quite as good as he was last season. But I see that offense improving even better. I think Mark Scheifele, if he stays healthy, will be huge to this team. Kyle Connor could improve as well. I think Patrick Laine will be able to get the most goals in the NHL next season. I think they're really prime and ready to make a run for the playoffs, and of course make a run to be one of the best teams in the NHL, and of course to win the Central Division. I think they're pretty much a lock for that right now. They're fantastic. They have so much depth, and I feel like that will definitely translate to a top 3 finish in the NHL. That Nylander fall. And for number 1 this season, I have the San Jose Sharks. Now, if you watched my predictions on who will win the President's Trophy, you already know the San Jose Sharks I predicted to get number 1. Now, I predicted the San Jose Sharks to win the President's Trophy before they had Erik Karlsson, so I really am in a good spot here. I really do have faith in San Jose to maybe even improve from what they had before. Honestly, having Erik Karlsson is a huge, huge factor for them. I think Martin Jones will be the Vezina candidate and will be the Vezina voter and will be the Vezina winner this next NHL season. I really do like that offense. I like that defense. Of course, it's one of the best in the NHL alongside of Nashville right now. And honestly, it's just a lot of love to San Jose for what they've been able to build in the last couple of years. And honestly, they've always had a great team, but this might be the best that they've ever had. And I know I kind of went a little bit crazy on this, but if I can get any of these teams right, I'd be pretty happy. If I can get one of these teams right with the points or with where they're placed in the NHL by the end of the season, I'd be pretty happy with myself. But of course, with this video, I want to know from you guys, what do you think about my predictions on where each team will place? Where did I place your favorite team? And where do you agree with my predictions here? And of course, I want to know your guys' predictions. Who do you think will win the President's Trophy? Who will be the worst team in the league? And every team in between, if you're that crazy as me. So, that is going for it, guys. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you like and subscribe. Again, tell me down below what you think of my predictions and what are your predictions as well for the all-in-all NHL predictions for the standings in general. And I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.